Greetings. Today we're going to finish up chapter 5 and do part 2. One way that language is very powerful is through naming. Naming defines and differentiates people and things. So if you think about your name probably suggests a number of things. Your name probably suggests a particular gender, a particular age group, and a particular ethnicity. So, for example, with age group, there are not too many women named Gertrude in this age, but many years ago that was a really popular name. Ethnicity also, names might be very common, such as Jesus is a very common name in a lot of Spanish speaking countries, but the English version of it, Jesus, is not something that's commonly children are named. Naming practices vary by culture and they evolve over time. So, how we name people and things varies. So, if you think about how you received your own name and what kind of things that meant. So, for example, my middle name is the same as my aunt's middle name. And naming through families is something that is practiced in this culture in the US. Also, many men may name their sons their same name and then add a junior at the end, but that's incredibly uncommon for women to do that with girls. So these are naming practices. They differ all over the country and all over the world. And we often make judgments about a person's character on the basis of his or her name. So, one example might be if there was someone in, let's say, elementary school that you really didn't like, and that person's name was Chris. If you come across somebody else named Chris, those characteristics, you may kind of put those on that other person and automatically have an unfavorable judgment about them simply because they have the name of someone that you didn't like. Another way that words are powerful is through persuasion. And persuasion is the process of convincing people to think or act in a certain way. There are a number of ways that we do that. One is the anchor and contrast strategy, where we anchor a particular position that a person has, so something they already believe, and then contrast it with something else to show possibly some of the good things about another position. Norm of reciprocity, when we want to convince someone to think a particular way, we might get them to talk to us about their own way of thinking. So if I talk to you about my way of thinking, it's only polite if I listen to your way of thinking. So that's the norm of reciprocity. Social validation principle is how often people or how many people feel a particular thing. So, for example, very recently, the use of the Confederate flag anywhere is beginning to be socially frowned upon. That's the social validation principle. It's something that was perfectly acceptable for quite some time, but now it is becoming less and less favorable because of the social validation principle, because more and more people are finding it less favorable. Credibility can also be affected by language, and that is really powerful. Credibility is whether people see us as competent and trustworthy. And there are ways that we can enhance or damage our credibility. So the first is using cliches. So if I came out and told you, go get an education and be all you want to be, yeah, that cliche of be all you want to be, people would be like, really? That's a cliche, and that could damage my credibility as an educator by using those tired old phrases. Dialects can also either enhance or damage credibility. So, for example, I would be perceived as much smarter if I were to open my mouth and speak with either a French or an English accent. Now, it's not that people with French or English accents are automatically smarter, but they're perceived that way, so it enhances their credibility. I might also use equivocation. And equivocation is where I use words that kind of gloss over and don't really get at specifics. So it's sometimes hard to pin down my position. If I do that, that could be seen as damaging if you would catch me at that. But it could also enhance my credibility if you kind of get me to believe, or if I kind of get you to believe that I believe your position. And then finally, weasel words. And weasel words are those kinds of words that make you think that think a particular way or have a particular impression. And I'm using that word specifically to create the impression, not just because or not even if it's true. Finally, words are powerful because we can use words to comfort others, to acknowledge the loss that others have, to express sympathy for what they might be going through, to offer positive reflections, so looking at what a person is going through and kind of putting a positive spin on it, or not necessarily a positive spin, but taking a positive perspective and offering assistance, right? We can do all of that through words. We can even do it to comfort ourselves through journaling about thoughts and feelings. So that's what I've got for you for chapter 5, and we'll see you on chapter 6. Thanks.